For me to become confident in myself, I took the extreme and moved halfway across the world to the beautiful city of Valladolid, Spain. In order to get accustomed to the daily life in Spain, I needed to recognize, accept, and adapt to the daily life and all the aspects of culture shock that I experienced. To start off my day in this new country, I would wake up at 8 a.m. and have a coffee and pastry ready and made for me by my host mom. She made a fresh coffee every day in a mocha pot. After this, I would get dressed and ready for the day. Amongst this is where my first aspect of culture shock happened. I recall a conversation with my host mom, who worked in a school, in which she told me that if students go to school in sweatpants or pajamas, the teacher will send them home to put on more appropriate clothing. Once I was ready to leave for my classes at university, I would have to walk, which is something else I had to adapt to while abroad, the sheer walkability of the cities. Although I lived in a smaller big city while abroad, and the public transportation was available to me, it was just easier and more culturally relevant to walk somewhere. This was very different for me, as I grew up in a town with a population of 5,000 people and had to drive everywhere, whereas Valladolid has a population of 300,000 and I walked everywhere. From this point, I would take classes from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and be home by 2 p.m. Moving on, another shock that I experienced about the culture was the meal times throughout the day. My family ate lunch between 2 and 3 p.m., and after this we would take a siesta, which is something else I wasn't accustomed to, as I come from a fast-paced, schedule-oriented American lifestyle. And if I decided it was a nice day out and I wanted to walk around, most stores are closed from approximately 2 to 5 p.m. So I would have to go get a coffee or glass of wine with a friend. It is not uncommon at any time of the day to go to a restaurant and see one person having a coffee and the table next to them having a glass of wine or beer. I would then go home just to hang out until dinner time, which happened for my family around 8 and 9 p.m., which was something I really had to adjust to. The final aspect of culture shock on a day-to-day basis comes from the sizing of meals. Typically, in the US, dinner is a bigger meal than lunch, but this happens to be the opposite for my situation in Spain. Lunch would be my biggest meal, for example, paella, chickpeas and meat, spaghetti and pasta, etc. And dinner, without fail, was a sandwich, or bocadillo. They would buy a baguette every morning, and since it was just the three of us, my host mom, my host dad, and I, we would use the leftover baguette from lunch to make bocadillos. They were typically with chorizo, jamón, tortilla de patatas, salchichas, o calamares. Finally, we would watch TV until bedtime, which was typically between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. for my family. Some other aspects of culture shock that I experienced outside of my day-to-day life was how cheap and easily accessible travel was by train or plane, the nightlife, the gender roles in the house between my host parents, and also the beautiful architecture that is so rich and abundant throughout the country and even the continent. Finally, something that isn't talked about enough from living abroad is the reverse culture shock one gets when coming back to their home country. There was always the stereotype that Americans were loud and obnoxious, and I recall my first night back in the States. I was with my family and with everyone talking so loudly and the TVs going on in the background. It was something I wasn't used to, and I remember having a sensory overload and my brain being exhausted. Studying abroad changed my life, and seeing how another culture operates really helped me expand my view on the world and how I am able to view not only other people, but as an education major, students I will end up having in my classroom.